Welcome to today's briefing. We're here to talk about a really critical issue, one that every trade advisor is grappling with right now. It's this idea that our global food supply chains are, well, a double-edged sword. We're going to dig into the complex, sometimes tense, relationship between how integrated we are with global trade and what that means for the price of food back home.
So, this really brings us to the central question, doesn't it? It's what every policymaker is asking, especially after the major shocks we've seen over the last few years. The question is, when we dive deeper into global trade, are we getting more stability in our food prices, or are we just opening ourselves up to some really dangerous volatility? All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We've got 5 main sections. We'll kick things off by looking at the global shocks that have made all this so urgent. Then, we'll get to the heart of it, the core trade-off that new research has identified. After that, we'll break down the good stuff, the benefits, and then look at the risks. And we'll wrap up by talking about what this all means for policy and strategy.
Okay, let's jump right into our first section. We need to set the stage here and understand exactly why this whole trade-off conversation has become so incredibly important lately.
You know, it feels like recent events have really put a spotlight on just how fragile these highly integrated supply chains can be. I mean, think about the Russian blockade of the Black Sea. That had an immediate effect on wheat shipments from Ukraine, and you could feel the ripples hitting global grain markets almost instantly. Or remember the backups in major ports like Los Angeles because of COVID-19. All of these shocks really drove home just how exposed our own local prices are to things happening halfway around the world. So, what's really fascinating here is the way new economic research is framing this whole challenge. It's not just a simple case of trade is good or trade is bad. What we're actually looking at is a fundamental trade-off, something every single country has to figure out how to navigate. And the analysis really zeroes in on this concept that economists call global agricultural value chains, or GAVCs for short. What is that? Well, it's basically the whole journey of our food. Think about the entire global network, from the farmer planting the seed, to the processing plant, to the packaging, all the steps that get food from anywhere in the world onto our shelves.
And there's this key study, it's a 2025 paper from the American Journal of Agricultural Economics that's really central to this. They looked at 138 countries over 15 years, a huge data set, and what they found is something they call a critical mean variance trade-off for any country that's part of these chains.
And this, right here, this is the heart of it. This is the core dilemma. On one side of the scale, you've got a really clear benefit. The more a country gets involved in these global value chains, the lower its average food prices tend to be. That's a huge win for consumers. But, and this is the big but, on the other side of the scale, that exact same integration brings a major risk, more food price volatility. In other words, you get more dramatic, unpredictable price swings.
Okay, so let's dig into that first part of the trade-off. Let's look at the upside, the clear evidence that this all leads to more affordable food.
The research here is really crystal clear. It's pretty much unambiguous. The data shows that as a country ramps up its participation in these global value chains, its domestic food prices, adjusted for inflation, go down. It's a classic case of what we've always called the gains from trade. And we're not talking about a tiny effect here. The impact is actually pretty significant. The study's models found that for every single percentage point increase in a country's integration into these chains, you see a drop in real food prices somewhere between 2 and 7%. That is a huge deal when you think about consumer affordability. Now, for anyone who wants to see the hard numbers, this table shows the key result from the main statistical model in the study. That number you see, negative 0.0695, that's the statistical meat and potatoes. It shows a strong, significant relationship. It's the proof that says, yes, as a country's share in these global chains goes up, its average food prices go down. No question about it. All right, but we know there's another side to this story. So now let's flip the coin and look at the risk that comes with it, that increased price volatility. And this is where that trade-off really snaps into focus. Because what the research also finds is that even though average prices are lower, they're also way less stable. The deeper you get into these global chains, the more your food price volatility goes up. And that means a lot more uncertainty for everyone, from consumers to producers. And let's put a number on that too. For every 1 percentage point increase in that global integration, the models show that price volatility goes up by about 0.35 percentage points. So you can see the trade-off right there on the numbers. The average price goes down, but the swings from high to low get much, much wider. But it gets even more nuanced. The study found that it's not just if you participate, but where you participate in the value chain. So we've got to think about upstream activities, that's stuff closer to the source, like farming or fishing, versus downstream activities, which are closer to us, the consumers, like food processing or making beverages. And here's what the data showed, something really specific. That jump in price volatility, it seems to be driven more by that downstream sector, the food and beverages part. What does that suggest? Well, it tells us that a lot of that international price shock gets passed along to us in those final stages, in the processing and distribution.
Interestingly, this doesn't hit every country the same way. When they split the data by income level, it turns out this volatility effect is really being driven by upper middle income countries. And the researchers have a theory about this. It's like there's a danger zone. These countries are connected enough to the global economy to import all the shocks, but they might not have the same safety nets or financial tools that high-income countries use to soften the blow.
So the big question is, what do we do with this information? What does it all mean for strategy and policy? Let's get into the key implications of this research, especially for managing that constant balancing act between efficiency and resilience. What this all points to is that we need to be actively managing our supply chain risks. We can't just chase the lowest cost and call it a day. So what does that look like? It means things like building stronger risk-sharing language into supply contracts. It might mean strategically supporting our own domestic supply for really important commodities. And it for sure means building reliable trade partnerships to limit our exposure. And here's a crucial point for policymakers. You have to remember who wins and who loses. Consumers get the benefit of lower prices, sure, but our producers, they can get hit twice. Once by the lower prices and again by the wild swings in volatility. And remember that point about downstream sectors? This is why a simple one-size-fits-all policy is just not going to cut it. We know that trade-off is sharpest in the sectors that are closer to the consumer. So our policies have to be smart, they have to be nuanced. We have to recognize that different parts of the value chain carry completely different levels of risk.
So really, the challenge for all of us in modern trade policy isn't about making some black and white choice between global trade and total isolation. That's a false choice. The real job, the core task, is to design smart, sophisticated policies that let us get all the benefits of integration while at the same time actively managing the risks that we know come with it.
And all of this brings us right back to the central strategic question that this evidence forces us to ask. I mean, let's be honest. We're living in an era of increasing global shocks, pandemics, geopolitical conflicts, you name it. It feels like the new normal. So the question we have to leave on the table is this. How do we best balance that relentless pursuit of economic efficiency, which is what gives our people affordable food, with the absolute undeniable need to build resilience into our most critical supply chains?